Celeste Blackwood pressed her palms against the cool marble of her bathroom vanity, staring at the stranger in the mirror. The woman looking back wore a designer gown worth more than most people's annual salary, diamonds that had once graced European royalty, and an expression of absolute despair. Tomorrow she would marry Marcus Steele, a man whose smile never reached his calculating eyes. The engagement party downstairs buzzed with Manhattan's elite, their laughter echoing through the Blackwood mansion like the sound of coins falling into a vault. Celeste had grown up in this world of champagne toasts and business handshakes disguised as social pleasantries. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like a funeral. Her father, Theodore Blackwood, had built his empire through strategic alliances and calculated risks. His latest gambit involved merging Blackwood Industries with Steel Corporation, creating a monopoly that would dominate the Eastern Seaboard's shipping industry. The marriage was merely the final signature on a billion-dollar contract, and Celeste was the pen. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Celeste, darling, your guests are asking for you." Her mother's voice carried the practiced warmth of a seasoned hostess, but Celeste detected the underlying steel that had helped Eleanor Blackwood navigate 30 years of high society politics. "I'll be down in a moment," Celeste replied, her voice steadier than her hands. She had overheard Marcus on the phone earlier, discussing their honeymoon itinerary with his assistant. Not romantic destinations, but business meetings disguised as vacation stops. Their marriage would be a traveling boardroom, their children future heirs to a corporate dynasty built on ambition rather than affection. The weight of 5 generations of Blackwood expectations pressed down on her shoulders like lead. Her great-great-grandmother had married for duty, sacrificing personal happiness for family security. Each generation had continued the tradition, trading love for legacy, passion for profit. But Celeste had tasted something different during her brief college years before. Theodore pulled her back into the family business. She had met people who laughed without calculating the social benefit, who touched without measuring the transaction value. She had glimpsed a world where worth wasn't measured in stock portfolios. As she descended the grand staircase, accepting congratulations from faces she recognized but didn't truly know, Celeste made a decision that would shatter everything her family had built. She smiled, played her part through the evening, and began planning her escape. The next morning, as her stylist arranged her veil and her mother fussed over last-minute details, Celeste slipped away. She had packed light, taking only what she could carry and her grandmother's pearl necklace, the one piece of jewelry that held sentimental rather than monetary value. Her silver sedan cut through the morning traffic as church bells chimed the hour. She should have been walking down the aisle. By the time her father discovered her absence, Celeste was already 300 miles away, driving toward mountains she had only seen in photographs, chasing a horizon that promised freedom from golden chains. Part 2. Sanctuary in Shadows, Oliver. Hayes wiped sawdust from his hands as thunder rolled across Pine Valley, rattling the windows of his workshop. The storm had arrived earlier than forecasted, sending sheets of rain against the converted barn where he crafted furniture that would outlast the trees they came from. His daughter Luna was safely at her aunt's house for the night, leaving him alone with the scent of cedar shavings and the rhythmic patter of rainfall. The crash came just after midnight, a sound like the world breaking apart, followed by an eerie silence. Oliver grabbed his flashlight and rain jacket, following the beam of light through the forest until he found the silver sedan wrapped around an ancient oak tree. Steam rose from the crumpled hood, like incense from a prayer he wasn't sure had been answered. Inside, a woman in a torn wedding dress lay unconscious against the steering wheel, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. Oliver's hands, steady from years of precise woodworking, checked her pulse and breathing before carefully extracting her from the wreckage. She was alive but barely conscious, mumbling words he couldn't understand as he carried her back to his workshop. His first aid training from his construction days kicked in automatically. Clean the wound. Check for concussion signs. Keep her warm and awake. As she gradually regained consciousness, her eyes focused on his face with an expression of profound confusion. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice hoarse and uncertain. "Pine Valley. You crashed your car in the storm. I'm Oliver Hayes. What's your name?" She hesitated, and Oliver saw something flicker behind her eyes, a decision being made in real time. "Grace," she said finally. "Grace Morgan." Oliver didn't question the slight pause or the way she touched her wedding dress, as if surprised to find herself wearing it. Everyone had secrets in a small mountain town. What mattered was that she was hurt and needed help. Over the following days, Grace proved to be unlike anyone Oliver had ever met. She possessed an odd combination of sophisticated knowledge and practical inexperience. She could identify the age and origin of his antique tools with expert precision, but had never operated a coffee maker. She spoke about art and literature with genuine passion, but seemed amazed by simple pleasures like watching sunrise paint the mountains gold. When Luna returned from her aunt's house, she took to Grace immediately with the uncomplicated acceptance that only children possess. "Are you going to stay with us?" Luna asked over breakfast, her gap-toothed smile bright as morning sunshine. Grace's eyes met Oliver's across the kitchen table, and he saw vulnerability there that made his chest tight. "For a little while," she said softly, "if that's okay with your father." Oliver nodded, not trusting his voice. Since his wife Sarah's death 3 years ago, he had built walls around his heart to protect both himself and Luna from further loss. But something about Grace's quiet strength and hidden sadness called to him in ways he hadn't expected. As weeks passed, Grace integrated herself into their lives with surprising ease. She helped Luna with homework, assisted Oliver in his workshop, and brought a gentle joy to their daily routines that had been missing since Sarah's passing. Pine Valley accepted her as one of their own, asking few questions and offering quiet support that small communities excel at providing. Neither Oliver nor Grace spoke about the future, living instead in the precious present where pain could heal and hearts could mend. Luna Hayes had always been observant, a trait that served her well in navigating the complex social dynamics of Pine Valley Elementary. At 8 years old, she possessed an intuitive understanding of people that often surprised adults, which was why she noticed immediately that Miss Grace had never been married, despite the beautiful wedding dress she'd arrived in. "Papa," Luna said one evening as they worked together in the garden Grace had planted behind their house, "why do grown-ups sometimes pretend things that aren't true?" Oliver paused in his weeding, considering his daughter's question carefully. Luna had been asking increasingly perceptive questions since Grace had joined their household 3 months ago. "Sometimes people pretend because the truth might hurt someone they care about," he said finally. Luna nodded solemnly, her small hands gentle with the tomato seedlings Grace had shown her how to transplant. "Miss Grace pretends sometimes, but she's not mean pretending. She's scared pretending." The accuracy of his daughter's observation struck Oliver like a physical blow. He had seen the fear in Grace's eyes whenever strangers came to town, the way she tensed when her phone buzzed with unknown numbers, the careful way she avoided discussing her past. But he had also seen her genuine laughter when Luna told silly jokes, her tears of joy at Luna's school play, her fierce protectiveness when another child had been unkind to Luna at the playground. Grace had become essential to their lives in ways that both thrilled and terrified Oliver. She brought light to corners of their home that had been dark since Sarah's death. Luna bloomed under her attention, growing more confident and curious each day, and Oliver found himself falling in love with a woman whose real name he didn't even know. The realization came to him on a Tuesday evening as he watched Grace teaching Luna to braid friendship bracelets at the kitchen table. The lamplight caught the auburn highlights in her hair, and her face held an expression of complete contentment that made his heart race. She belonged here, with them, in this life they had built together from fragments of loss and hope. Papas. Staring again, Luna announced with 8-year-old directness, causing Grace to look up with a soft blush coloring her cheeks. Am I that obvious? Oliver asked, settling into the chair beside them. Only to those who matter, Grace replied, her smile warm and genuine. That night, after Luna was safely tucked into bed with 3 stories and 2 glasses of water, Oliver and Grace found themselves alone on the front porch swing Sarah had loved. The evening air carried the scent of honeysuckle and the distant sound of the creek that ran behind their property. Oliver, Grace began, her voice uncertain. There are things about me you don't know. Things that might change how you feel. Oliver took her hand, marveling at how perfectly it fit in his palm. The woman who reads bedtime stories with different voices for every character, who taught Luna that mistakes are just practice in disguise, who makes our house feel like home again. That's who you are. Everything else is just details. Grace's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling as she leaned against his shoulder. I love you, she whispered, the words barely audible above the evening breeze. I love you too, Oliver replied, meaning it with every fiber of his being. Neither of them saw the dark sedan that had been parked at the edge of town for the past week, or the telephoto lens capturing their intimate moment from the shadows. Part 4. Shadows from the past. Detective Morgan Rivers had tracked missing persons across 3 continents, but Celeste Blackwood had proven more elusive than international fugitives. For 4 months, she had seemed to vanish completely, leaving no digital footprint, no financial trail, no trace of her existence. Then a single credit card transaction at a small-town diner had led him to Pine Valley, and the woman the locals knew as Grace Morgan. Rivers sat in his rented sedan, studying surveillance photographs that told a story Theodore Blackwood wouldn't want to hear. His missing daughter wasn't being held against her will or suffering from amnesia. She was living a deliberately chosen life with a man and child who clearly adored her, and she appeared happier than any of the society photos in her father's mansion had ever captured. The job should have been simple: locate Celeste, confirm her safety, and report back to her father. But Rivers had been a detective long enough to recognize when a case was more complicated than it appeared. The woman in these photographs had found something worth running toward, not just something to run from. His phone buzzed with Theodore Blackwood's voice, sharp with barely controlled fury. Have you found her? I've located Miss Blackwood, Rivers confirmed. She's safe and appears to be living under an assumed identity in a small mountain town. Assumed identity? Theodore's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. What kind of assumed identity? Rivers hesitated, then decided honesty was the only option. She's been living as Grace Morgan for the past 4 months. She's integrated into the local community and appears to be in a relationship with a local craftsman named Oliver Hayes. He has a young daughter. The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough that Rivers wondered if the call had dropped. When Theodore spoke again, his voice carried the cold precision that had built Blackwood Industries from a small shipping company into a maritime empire. I want you to approach her, privately. Tell her she has 24 hours to return home voluntarily, or I'll be forced to take measures that will destroy the lives of everyone she's become attached to. Make sure she understands that Oliver Hayes and his daughter will become collateral damage in a very public scandal. Rivers felt his stomach clench. Sir, with respect, these people haven't done anything wrong. They don't even know who she really is. Exactly. Which makes them perfect leverage. 24 hours, Detective Rivers, and I want photographs of the conversation to ensure she understands the gravity of her situation. The line went dead, leaving Rivers staring at his phone with the sick realization that he was about to destroy the most genuine happiness he had witnessed in years of investigating human misery. But Theodore Blackwood paid well, and Rivers had his own family to protect. That evening, he approached the Hayes property just as Oliver was teaching Luna to identify constellations in the clear mountain sky. Grace stood on the porch, her face radiant with contentment as she watched the two people she had come to love most in the world. "Grace Morgan," Rivers called softly, stepping into the circle of porch light. The transformation was instantaneous. Color drained from her face, her posture shifted from relaxed to defensive, and Oliver immediately moved to place himself between the stranger and his family. "Who's asking?" Oliver's voice carried a protective edge Rivers respected. "Detective Morgan Rivers. I need to speak with Miss Morgan privately. It concerns her family." Grace's hand found Oliver's arm, her fingers trembling slightly. "It's all right," she said, though her voice suggested otherwise. "Luna, sweetheart, why don't you go inside and get ready for bed?" As Luna reluctantly obeyed, Rivers saw the exact moment when Oliver realized the woman he loved had been living a lie. The pain in his eyes was immediate and devastating, but he didn't step away from her side. 24 hours, Rivers said quietly, handing Grace a manila envelope. "Your father's terms are inside. I'm sorry." The envelope fell from Grace's nerveless fingers, scattering photographs of her life in Pine Valley across the porch floor like evidence at a crime scene. Theodore Blackwood arrived in Pine Valley like a storm front, his black limousine carving through the small town's main street with predatory precision. He had come to collect his daughter and crush the illusion she had built for herself among these simple mountain people. What he found instead was a woman he barely recognized. Celeste stood in Oliver's workshop, no longer the compliant heiress who had fled from her wedding 4 months ago. Her designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a flannel shirt. Her manicured hands showed calluses from honest work. Most disturbing of all, her eyes held a strength that hadn't existed in the Blackwood mansion. "Hello, Father," she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the confrontation ahead. Theodore surveyed the workshop with barely concealed disgust, taking in the hand-carved furniture, the scent of wood shavings, and the modest life his daughter had chosen over billions. "This is what you traded your heritage for? A craftsman's hovel and another man's child?" "I traded a prison for a home," Celeste replied. "And I found something you never taught me existed. Sentiment is a luxury we cannot afford, Celeste. Blackwood. Industries requires. Blackwood Industries can go to hell." The words hung in the air like a challenge thrown down before a king. Theodore's face flushed with anger, but before he could respond, Oliver stepped through the workshop door with Luna at his side. The child immediately ran to Celeste, wrapping small arms around her waist with fierce protectiveness. "This is Luna," Celeste said, her hand gentle on the child's head. "And this is Oliver Hayes, the man I intend to marry." Theodore's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Marry? You're already engaged to Marcus Steele. The contracts have been signed. The merger depends on this union. Your personal feelings are irrelevant." Oliver stepped forward, and Theodore was surprised by the quiet dignity in the craftsman's voice. "With respect, sir, your daughter's happiness is never irrelevant. Grace, Celeste, she's not property to be traded." "Grace?" Theodore's eyebrows rose mockingly. "She didn't even trust you enough to tell you her real name. How can you claim to love someone you don't know?" "I know her heart," Oliver replied, simply. "Names are just words. Character is what matters." Luna looked up at the adults with 8-year-old wisdom. "Miss Grace loves us, and we love her. That's what families do." Theodore felt something crack in his chest at the child's innocent certainty. He had spent 30 years building an empire, sacrificing relationships for revenue, trading affection for advantage. His own daughter had chosen a carpenter's love over a billionaire's legacy, and the certainty in her eyes suggested she would make the same choice again. The scandal will destroy them, Theodore said quietly, his last weapon. When the media discovers where you've been, they'll become targets. Is your happiness worth their suffering? Celeste's face paled, but Oliver squeezed her hand. Actually, sir, I have a proposal. Theodore turned his cold gaze on the craftsman. You presume to negotiate with me? I presume to protect the woman I love. Oliver's voice remained steady. Pine Valley has something your business world doesn't: genuine loyalty. These people will protect Celeste's privacy because they care about her, not because they're paid to. And as for your merger with Steel Corporation, I believe you're overlooking a more profitable option. Theodore frowned. What option? Oliver smiled, and Theodore glimpsed the sharp intelligence that had won Celeste's heart. Your daughter inherited your business acumen, but she also has something you lack. People trust her. Pine Valley has a resource you need: sustainable timber, rights and mineral deposits worth more than your shipping merger. Celeste could negotiate those rights where outsiders would fail. She could build you an empire based on community partnership rather than corporate conquest. The proposal hung in the mountain air while Theodore calculated possibilities. A sustainable resource partnership would be worth billions over decades, far more profitable than a one-time merger, and it would require someone the locals trusted absolutely. You're suggesting my daughter become a business partner rather than a corporate asset? Theodore asked slowly. I'm suggesting she become the woman she was meant to be, Oliver replied. Strong enough to choose love, smart enough to find a way to honor both her heart and her heritage. Theodore looked at his daughter, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. She held Oliver's hand and Luna's simultaneously, creating a circle of connection that he had never experienced in all his years of power. Very well, he said finally, but I want quarterly reports. And if this partnership fails, the merger with Steel Corporation proceeds as planned. Celeste smiled, the expression radiant as sunrise over the mountains. It won't fail, Father. We're building something that will last. As Theodore's limousine disappeared down the mountain road, Celeste Hayes, no longer hiding behind any name but her own, stood surrounded by the family she had chosen and the future she had fought to claim. Love had indeed proven to be the most expensive luxury of all, but it was also the only one truly worth its price.